What is going on, everyone? Welcome to our new education. We're going to be talking about something very important, the importance of net sheets and the importance of profit over price. So the reason I'm talking about this today is because I get phone calls all the time from people looking to sell. So this is for sellers, so pay attention, sellers. This is very important. You have to understand, when you have like a bottle of water, let's say, and you buy it for $1, and let's say you flip it and you sell for $2. You make $1 profit. That's it, right? $1 profit. But that's not how it works in real estate because there's so many different variables, from commissions to title insurance to incentives, right? So when you are selling your house, the price is not as important as the profit. I'll give you another example. Ready? Let's say there's an agent A and there's agent B, who's me. And let's say you owe nothing on your house. So let's just say you're selling it for $500,000. Agent A sells your house for $500,000 and you profit about $450,000, okay? I sell it for $490,000, so $10,000 less, but you profit $460,000. Who would you go with? Obviously, at that point, you say, well, yeah, I'm making less money on the price, but I'm making more money in profit. And this is what I'm going to be talking about today, the importance of this education to teach you how to make more money. Also, understanding that there's two different, markets. We have the seller's market and the buyer's market, and we have to understand how your profits will change because of different variables, which I'll show you in net sheets. Basically stating, are you going to have to give incentives to the buyer, or is the buyer going to ask for X, Y, Z, or can we have the buyer pay for this, what the seller normally pays for? And that's all going to be in today's education, the importance of net sheets and profit over price. You see, I changed the view for chapter 2. So, what are the variables when selling a house? Well, when you sell a house, number one, there's commissions. And I'm going to do a whole education separate on commissions where I think agents are taking full advantage of you. But commission is obviously number one, 4%, 5%, 6%. There is a difference, right? And what's important is this. Stop asking how much commission do you charge, because this is where I think a lot of sellers, and I'm not saying it's not important, but hear me here. I'll give you another example why never to ask that. If I made you $50,000 more than anybody else in the world can make you, would you care? No. Let's say I charged you 10% commission, everyone else charged you 5%. Would you care? No. It's all about your profit. So when you say, how much commission do you charge? You should say, I want you to tell me how much you charge, where you're spending your money. Not, you know what I'm saying? Not how much do you charge and that's it. How much do you charge? Because I want to know where that money is being spent. So it is important to understand commission is one of the variables. Then there's title insurance. And title insurance, it's different in different counties, but let's say Hillsborough County, seller chooses title and then pays for this title insurance, which is averagely like 0.05%, but you can call the title company to get exact numbers on the title insurance. This is what title insurance is. You're pretty much paying for the buyer's protection when they buy the house, free of liens and any mishaps that happen in the future. It's an insurance policy for that buyer. Kind of makes no sense that the seller is paying for that for the buyer, and that's why certain counties are different. But you have to realize that if you're in a county like Hillsborough County, where it's normal for the seller to choose title, well, then how do I use that to my advantage if it's a really hot market or I have a lot of buyers that want to buy my house? Well, that's another way to save money, right? So that is an advantage that you'll have. We'll talk about in the next chapter of this. You also have incentives. Now, this isn't all the time, but you have to realize this. Let's say right now you're trying to sell your house and there's 15, 20, 30 other houses on the market. And you go, there's also new construction down the road where they're giving the buyers all these different incentives, which I'll talk about a separate video on how the difference between what the builders make you pay, right, versus the sellers. So now you have to compete with them. So now you have this net sheet where you go, okay, I got to fill in the commission, right, whatever it is, and we'll talk about this on chapter 3. I have my title insurance I have to pay, right? There's doc stamps, which is a transfer tax of ownership, which is just another way of the government making money, right? And that is a variable that you have to pay the sellers. And then I have to give an incentive to these buyers. What's the incentive? Could be 1%, could be 2%, could be 3%. You can actually give up to 6% if it's an FHA buyer. But this is what sellers have no clue about. So when they go, oh, my house is worth $500,000. I go, yeah. Okay, let's say it is worth $500,000. Let's say I can get a buyer to give you $500,000, but what if that buyer needs 6% towards closing costs? Then you got to pay out an agent. Then you got this. Your profit is what makes all the sense. So what I want to go and sit down with you as a seller is to say, okay, here's the best case scenario. And I'm going to do a separate video on chapter 3 without me in it. I'm going to write it all out for you on the screen. And I'm going to say, here's the worst case scenario. So before anyone gets confused, before we go to the next chapter, let me explain this again. When you sell a house, you, the seller, have your own set of fees. These fees can be changed drastically in the sense of commissions, in the sense of incentives, which isn't a guaranteed, but you have to understand the market you're in. You have title insurance. Depending on what market, you can potentially have the buyer pay for it. So there are ways that you can make more money, or there are ways that you're going to make less money. So when I run net sheets for you, the seller, I'm going to say, as of today, in this market, if you were to put your house on the market and sell it for XYZ, this is the worst case scenario that's going to happen. It's going to be this commission, the title, this, and the incentives for the buyer. And then I'm going to say, but also, this is the best case scenario if we sell it, and this is what you profit. Because you need to know the worst case. Because when you're going to look at real estate and you want to buy something, you don't want to know the best case, you want to know the worst case. And if you're still okay and happy with the worst case scenario, then you are going to be in great arms and you're going to have a great transaction. But if you're like, whoa, that's way too low, that's why you need proper net sheets. So you don't get these normal, ridiculous net sheets from other agents and then think you're going to make all this money. You go in the contract with the house of your dreams or new construction, and then all of a sudden, when the truth comes out, when this buyer needs this and that, and then you get your net sheet or the closing table and you're like, I'm making $20,000, $30,000 less, because it happens all the time. I get phone calls about it. This is the importance of what we're talking about. So in chapter 3, I'm going to show you some different variations, right? And I'm going to explain to you, voiceover, what I'm doing for you guys to understand the difference when selling, how to make more money. An average net sheet would show $500,000, you owe nothing, 6% commission, and you pay title. And then it would say, after everything's said and done, you would net a certain amount of money, right? But that's the average normal way of doing it. Hey, your net is around $463,000, but I want to know the variables. So for instance, let's say me, $500,000, I'm going to charge you 5% if another agent is working with me. The buyer needs 3% towards closing costs. Now your net is $453,000. Let's do another scenario. Once if I get my own buyer, I only charge you 3.5%, but that buyer also needs 3%, and you choose title. So now I'm changing the variables. Your net is $460, more than just before. Hey, how about this one? Buyer comes in lower at $475. I only take it at a 3% commission, but there is no incentives for the buyer, and I get the buyer to choose title. $461. So this is what I'm talking about. That's a $2,000 difference on a $20,000 lower offer from the first one. The importance of using net sheets. It's so important to understand the value of net sheets and how they can show you the difference between profiting one way and profiting another.